There are good players, there are great players, and then there are the guys who seem like they were engineered in a lab to be perfect at baseball. Scott Rolen was one of those guys. For parts of 17 seasons, he was the absolute blueprint of a franchise third baseman. He wasn't just a hitter who could field, he was a defensive artist who also happened to be a wrecking ball at the plate. Let's just run through the facts, because they're kind of overwhelming. Over his career with the Phillies, Cardinals, Blue Jays, and Reds, Rolen was a 7-time All-Star. He was the 1997 National League Rookie of the Year. He has a Silver Slugger Award. He won a World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals in 2006, where he was an absolute force, batting a scorching .421 in the Fall Classic. And then there's the defense. Oh, the defense. Scott Rolen didn't just play third base, he owned it. He won 8 Gold Gloves, which is tied for the 4th most ever by a third baseman. He was a human highlight reel at the hot corner, a vacuum cleaner for anything hit in his zip code. You add it all up, over 2,000 hits, over 300 home runs, and nearly 1,300 RBIs. He finished his career in a ridiculously elite club of third basemen with 2,000-plus hits, 500-plus doubles, 300-plus home runs, and 1,200-plus RBIs, joining names like Mike Schmidt, George Brett, and Chipper Jones. This isn't just a very good player. This is a baseball god. His resume looked bulletproof. So with a resume that perfect, we get to the central mystery. When Scott Rolen's name first appeared on the Hall of Fame ballot in 2018, he didn't just miss. He got crushed. He received a shockingly low 10.2% of the vote. To get into Cooperstown, you need 75%. 10.2% isn't just a no, it's a don't even think about it. In fact, it's the lowest first-year vote percentage for any player ever elected by the writers. It would take 6 grueling years on the ballot for him to finally get the call. Why? Why was there such a massive disconnect between what his resume screamed and what the voters heard? To answer that, you have to understand the holy war that was being waged for the soul of the Baseball Hall of Fame. To get why it took 7 years, you need to know the two warring philosophies that defined Hall of Fame voting. On one side, you had the old guard, the traditionalists. On the other, the new guard, the analytical revolutionaries. For years, Scott Rolen was caught right in the crossfire. First, let's make the case against Rolen, the way an old guard voter saw it. For decades, the Hall of Fame was about big, round, magic numbers. For hitters, that meant 500 home runs or 3,000 hits. Rolen finished with 316 homers and 2,077 hits. Great numbers, but to a voter who grew up with those ironclad benchmarks, they just didn't feel immortal. For a corner infielder, a power position, 316 homers didn't exactly pop off the page. Then there was the eye test and the story. The Hall isn't just for great players, it's for legends who defined their era. Did Scott Rolen ever feel like the single best player in baseball? He only finished in the top 10 of MVP voting once in his entire career. He was more of a quiet, brutally efficient force than a flashy, larger-than-life personality. Some writers even pointed to his contentious departures from Philly and St. Louis as a knock against him. Plus, his overall postseason numbers weren't great, with a career batting average of just .220 in the playoffs. So, to the old guard, the case was simple: a very, very good player, but not a transcendent superstar. He belonged in the Hall of Very Good. But then, the new guard showed up with a different way of looking at the game. Their case for Rolen was built on one revolutionary idea: what if the old numbers were telling the wrong story? Their weapon was a statistic called WAR, or wins above replacement. WAR tries to answer one simple question: how many more wins did a player give his team compared to a generic guy you could call up from the minors? It combines everything: hitting, base running, and most importantly for Rolen, defense, into one single number. And when you look at Scott Rolen through the lens of WAR, the whole picture changes. His career WAR is 70.1. That's not just good. That's elite. At the time he was eligible, his WAR was higher than the average Hall of Fame third baseman and ranked in the top 10 all-time for the position. Suddenly, he's not on the outside looking in, he's comfortably inside the party. Analytics showed that from 1997 to 2004, his total contribution to winning, his WAR, was greater than certified legends like Chipper Jones and Derek Jeter. The reason WAR loved Rolen so much is that it finally found a way to properly value his incredible defense. Those 8 Gold Gloves weren't just trophies, they were statistical proof that he was a two-way monster. Traditional stats just couldn't capture the value of a diving stop or a perfect throw, but WAR could. It showed that Rolen's glove was just as valuable as his bat. So for years, the debate raged, the old guard's eye test versus the new guard's spreadsheets. But the real reason Scott Rolen finally got into Cooperstown wasn't just that the analytical case got stronger. It's that the jury itself changed. What forced the voters' hands was a slow, seismic shift in who was actually casting the votes. Over the 6 years Rolen was on the ballot, older, more traditionalist writers from the Baseball Writers Association of America began to retire. Their spots were filled by a younger generation of journalists who grew up dissecting the game on websites like Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus. They spoke the language of WAR and advanced metrics. For them, analytics weren't some weird new thing, they were just how you understood baseball. That steady, undeniable climb wasn't an accident. It was a changing of the guard in baseball media. Each year, as the voter pool became more analytically fluent, Rolen's case became less of a debate and more of an obvious conclusion. His candidacy was a proxy war for the soul of the hall, and his election was the final surrender of the old way of thinking. The data had won. Scott Rolen's induction into the Hall of Fame was more than just a party for a phenomenal career, it was a landmark moment for baseball. It was the official signal that the standards for greatness had evolved. The gatekeepers of Cooperstown had finally acknowledged that a player's worth isn't just measured in big, sexy numbers like home runs, but in their total contribution to winning. Rolen's plaque doesn't just represent 316 home runs or 8 Gold Gloves. It represents the value of defensive genius. It represents the value of quiet, year-after-year consistency over flashy superstardom. He was never the loudest guy in the room, but for 17 years, he was one of the absolute best, a player whose true impact was only fully revealed when we found a new way to measure it. Scott Rolen's plaque in Cooperstown is more than a tribute to a great player. It's a monument to a new way of seeing the game. And it proves that sometimes, quiet, consistent, two-way greatness is the most valuable kind of all, even if it takes the world a little while to catch up. But what do you think? Was Rolen's long wait a travesty, or a necessary part of the process? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video, and click on the notification bell. And don't forget to click on the playlist above to watch more MLB Hall of Famers of his era. Thanks for watching.